The Render token doesn't seem to care about any of the other coins. It just keeps pumping like there is no tomorrow, so don't miss out. Render is on a mission to democratize GPU cloud rendering and is pioneering products that are widely used in the filmmaking industry. In this video, you're in for technology, tokenomics, and price predictions, and as always here on my channel, I have all the important information prepared and packaged ready for you. Coming up in this episode of Philprints, your one and only stop for crypto, finance, and trading. With me, you will gain the skill set and the mindset to crush the markets. Before we start, if you haven't subscribed yet to this channel, please ask yourself why and do it now. You really don't want to miss any of the next videos. Also have a look at my Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter accounts. They are linked here on my channel. Let's get to it. So before we get into the technology, tokenomics, and price predictions, let me give you a quick primer first so that you understand everything perfectly. Now the cool thing is Render is using blockchain technology for a real world purpose, and that is video rendering. As you might know, this is used in a wide array of utility. It is essential for movies, series, visual effects, 3D models, and so much more. Heck, even this YouTube video, the one you're seeing right now, had to be rendered. In general, rendering means the actual processing of computing commands. With regards to the YouTube video example, I had to edit this video using a video editing software, and at this point it was basically just commands. And in order for making a single video file out of it, it had to be rendered by my GPU, meaning the graphics card of my computer. In the unusual event that you don't know what a GPU or graphics card is, it is the piece of hardware that generates what you see on your monitor. If you've been around in the crypto space for a while, around 1 to 3 cycles, you might remember a time when there were no GPUs left on the market because most of the GPUs were bought by blockchain miners. Here's an example. In the first part of 2021, 25% of all the GPUs that were sold, that were available for sale, went to crypto miners. And in 2017, this was even worse. Miners bought 3 million graphics cards. At least I remember it vividly, because back then I was about to build a gaming PC. And I had all the parts ready besides a graphics card, which obviously is the most important part for a gaming PC. So I was not a fan of the situation. Now, in rendering is exactly what AI, AR, and VR applications deeply require, and also all of the metaverse. Or how do you think that all of these amazing pictures are created by DALL-E or Midjourney? After you entered your text prompt, there is a whole lot of GPU computing power needed to make all of these pictures a reality for AI. And it's not just images, AI videos that are fully generated from text prompts are on the rise as well, like Eli, and there are many more to come. So that means demand for GPU rendering is bigger than it has ever been before. And it needs to be available now. I mean, AI development is moving so fast. But this is where Render Network comes into place with an ingenious solution. The Render Network provides near real-time rendering using a decentralized GPU processing model to meet users' increased GPU compute needs. And it does that by allowing users to rent out their GPU to others who need it at the moment. Because if you're honest, most of the time your GPU is not in use, just collecting dust. Of course, if you're playing video games 24/7, it'll be smoking hot. Then for sure there will be no computing units left for rendering. But let's be reasonable here. For most people, their private computer is not in use most of the time, because during the day they most likely use their work laptop, for example, or they might not use any computer and just their smartphone. And this is the time where you could put your private computer to work and let it earn money for you. Actually, the model itself is nothing new. Cloud computing providers like Amazon AWS are already providing this, but in a centralized manner. And the cool thing is Render does it in a decentralized way. How could it be any different for a blockchain project? And this really has some benefits. On the one hand, it's more efficient as it connects buyers and sellers of GPU power directly. And it's more scalable. I mean, how many computers are there in this world? That's a lot of GPU power to tap into. And the centralized service, AWS for example, for sure has a lot of GPUs, but nevertheless, it's capped at some point. And the solution by Render is basically infinitely scalable. In order for all of this to work, there is a marketplace for idle GPUs. And through this, the Render Network provides artists the ability to scale next generation rendering work at fractions of the cost and at orders of magnitude increases in speed when compared to centralized GPU cloud computing solutions. So the artists are basically on the left-hand side and the GPU power providers are on the right-hand side. And if he decides to bring GPU power into the network, then he will be rewarded with render tokens, basically just like a validator on a proof of stake chain. Also, the GPU providers will be rewarded for reliability. So there's a reputation score that will mark him as reliable for done jobs, and for higher tier work, which also means an increased token reward, the GPU provider has to meet the reputation score requirements. So this will then give him better and more jobs. And if he doesn't do his job well, then he won't get any jobs anymore. So that's kind of the slashing you would see with a proof of stake validator, where he will get deducted on his stack. So you might have guessed it, I already talked about comparisons with proof of stake and validators. Now the interesting thing is, Render is neither a proof of stake chain nor a proof of work chain. They have their own consensus mechanism and they call it proof of render. And this is because, as I explained, Render is focused all around his utility. And basically proof of render is kind of proof of work, as there is active computing power needed to take part as a GPU provider, same as a miner and a proof of work chain is also using GPU power to complete cryptographic puzzles and then be able to mine the next block. But here with proof of render, this GPU computing power is not just used to achieve trust and validate transaction, but for a real world scenario. And there's no specific mining rigs that have to be bought and have to be set up that do nothing else. It's computers and GPUs that are already there. And that makes proof of render basically the most efficient proof of work, if you will. Now, if the people with the GPUs get tokens, for sure the artists that need the GPU power have to pay with the tokens. And in order to make sure this all works properly, there is a specialized smart contract, an escrow smart contract, that ensures that the funds will only be exchanged if the job has been accomplished to the likings of the artist. This project is around for some time, I think 2017. So for years, Render was a layer 2 solution on Ethereum, but recently it has moved to Solana. So it's not Ethereum as you can see in this image. Now, in order to become a GPU provider or a miner, there are of course minimum hardware requirements, and these are kind of okay. For sure you need a beefy rig, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. For example, a Nvidia GTX 1070 is sufficient. AMD and Apple chips are on the roadmap, but this paper is from 2020. As you will see later, Apple chips are already supported, and I think AMD chips as well. You need at least 8 gigs of VRAM, that is very normal these days, and a system RAM of 32 gigabytes. It's a bit higher, but nothing too crazy. Well, and if you meet these requirements, you are then able to take part in the Render network and provide your GPU power. It's as easy as that. For sure, there's the possibility that the artist is not happy with the result of the rendering, and therefore he can choose to re-render the frames that are not sufficient in quality, and these failed frames will be then automatically sent to other nodes. And as you can see here, the user has 3 chances of re-rendering 4 frames, and after that the job will be halted and a support ticket will be generated, because then it's pretty likely that something is not adding up here. Also, depending on the computing job, there are 3 price tiers. Tier 1 is secure, tier 2 is high priority, and tier 3 is low priority. The price of each tier is calculated by the so-called octane bench R value, which is basically the baseline. So basically tier 1 is high priority and secure, so it's the most expensive. Tier 2 is still highest priority, but parallelized peer-to-peer rendering, so not as secure as tier 1. And if the job is not time sensitive, you can choose low priority, which will be less expensive, but could take its time. By the way, secure for tier 1 means that the node is verified, has a very good history, and for tier 2, they still have a good reputation. And tier 3 is basically the minimum network benchmark. And this is also where new miners or new GPU providers will start out. It's also possible for artists to not buy render tokens if they're not into crypto and don't know how all of this works. Then they could use PayPal or Stripe and claim so-called render credits. For the artist, this won't make any difference, and for the GPU provider also, because render will then buy render tokens in the value of the render credits and give the GPU provider the tokens and not the credits. So this is really only to make it easier for artists. Alright, now for the team and its roots, and also the partnerships and advisors, I can already tell you they are high class. The founder of Render is Jules Urbach, and he is not just the founder of Render, but the founder of the company OTOI. And Render is just one product in the portfolio of OTOI. By the way, on the Render Network website, there is this short 2-minute video of the founder. I advise you to watch it. It's very interesting. Now, OTOI is not just any firm. They are market leaders. And in their portfolio, there is a software called Token RNDR, which is the world's first GPU-based physically correct renderer and is able to do real-time 3D rendering. So this means there is nothing on the market like Token RNDR. You can also use the software to edit, create, and render realistic 2D images or videos based on 3D models. And it is extremely popular in the film and gaming industry. Do you know the series Westworld? The opening credits you see here, made with Token RNDR. Many of the scenes in the film Captain Marvel also done by Token RNDR. And there is so much more. And there is also a version of Token RNDR called Octane X that works on Macs and iPads with M1 and M2 Apple chips. And this was extremely big news because Octane X is connected to the Render network and makes it possible for artists to use it through the app. Octane X was even mentioned in the official Apple keynote presentation of the M2 Ultra Apple chip. Another project by OTOI is Lightstage, which is a cutting-edge scanning service for VFX and games. And it even won the Oscars Academy Award. And it allows for the digital capture of the human face with unparalleled fidelity and scientific accuracy. And, for example, makes it possible to animate the Hulk in the Avengers. OTOI basically works with every big tech company, filmmakers, and crypto projects, combined more than 50 enterprises. This means Apple, Google, Microsoft, Nvidia, HBO, Discovery, Disney, and so many more. And they have super high-class advisors as well. For example, Dr. Eric Schmidt, the executive chairman and former CEO of Google, Samuel J. Palmisano, the CEO of IBM, and the CTO of Lucasfilm, Richard G. Karris, Brendan Eich, the CEO and co-founder of the Brave browser. He also worked on Firefox before and is said to be the inventor of JavaScript. Then Mike Winkelmann, or better known as Beeple, one of the greatest NFT artists. If you don't know, this is the NFT he sold for $69 million last bull cycle in the NFT craze. Also, all of his work is rendered on Render Network. Also, when talking about crypto partnerships, Render Network is partnering with Siacoin and assists to provide a storage solution for the processed renderings by Render Network. On top of that, they partnered with the metaverse gaming experience Decentraland, the basic attention token, which has to do with the Brave browser, whose founder is one of the advisors, as I have shown you, and last but not least, Algorand. Now let's have a look at our beloved tokenomics. The first important thing to mention is that Render has shifted from the Ethereum blockchain to the Solana blockchain, and the Ethereum-based token was RNDR. And the new Solana-based token is called Render, like the Render network itself. This update is a couple of months ago in November 2023. And for users who switch to the new network, the old tokens will be burned and they will get the same amount of the new tokens. With this upgrade, Render network also introduced the burn and mint equilibrium. And this has to do with the process of proof of render and therefore the exchange of tokens between the artists and GPU providers. Because before on Ethereum, the tokens were just exchanged between those two parties. And now on Solana, all of the tokens that will be paid by the artists are burned, meaning destroyed, and the tokens that the GPU providers get are minted, meaning newly created. And through this process, which is visually shown here, it is possible to prevent inflation and control the supply. Because now it is possible to keep this amount of tokens that will be burned and minted the same, then there will be no difference. But if the usage of the product grows, they will burn more tokens than will be minted, meaning the supply decreases, and which then will subsequently move price up. On the other hand, for a period of time the usage of the network slows down, then they will mint more tokens than will be burned, which causes supply to increase and subsequently price moves down. On top of that, Render is making sure that the inflation per year is capped at 10%. So there's no way that the supply of Render is increasing by more than 10% a year, which we also don't see too often. Many of the projects have supply jumps of 100%, for example. As the project is around for some time, meaning since end of 2017, all of the private token sales are through for a very long time. They had no vesting schedule, so there will be no dumping to be expected now in 2024. Also, for example, in March 2020, Render Network itself bought up 4.5 million Render tokens to bring them into their ecosystem and therefore decrease supply. So as you can see, they are really behind their project. This is full-blown utility. In this project, you have no big actor who just wants to to dump tokens for a quick cash grab. And this makes it pretty special. You can also see this when looking at the allocation for the team, just 10%. This is so low and actually not surprises me when we're looking at OTOI. These are established market leaders. They don't do this for money. They make it to enhance their existing products. And 55% of the supply is a user development fund. So this will be fully reinvested into the project. Also, you can see here the render token holders are pretty much going vertical since the beginning of this year. And this pretty much reflects in price as well. There's basically just one direction, and that is up. The whole rally since October, November had nearly a 6x. And in this year alone, we made around 130%. Now, what is very surprising is, as I have shown you, this project is not new. It's been established in 2017. And normally, most of the projects you see in the crypto space have a very good run in their first bull cycle, maybe a decent run in the second cycle, but then basically that's it. And this token is 7 years old and still pumping like a brand new coin. And I think this has to do with a couple of things. First, the developers are super reputable. They have a real utility going on. Then they're now part of the Solana ecosystem, and Solana is super hyped up, which also influences Render Token. And Render Token is basically the #1 project in the AI narrative, or at least one of the top 3, top 5 projects. So we have Solana price action, we have the AI hype, and we have the bull cycle, plus amazing utility. That's basically the secret sauce that brings Render to this amazing price action. If we zoom out a little more from the very bottom of the bear market, so from January 2023, we have a 20x, once again for a project that is 7 years old. And this really shows where the AI hype will bring us, in my opinion. AI is becoming crazier and crazier every single day, and this basically makes Render a safe bet for me. So if you're looking for a token that will be for sure at least bring a 10x till the end of this bull cycle, Render is your friend, because it's not that often that we have a project that brings a lot of hype to the table and is a no-brainer. I mean, you're seeing what the AI hype is doing to the Nvidia stock. And as Render and Nvidia are affiliated, price action is acting very similar, as you can see here in the comparison, but basically shifted in time. As you can see here, the cursor, this recent leg up for Nvidia is basically this whole rally since September, but Render also had this first rally from January, as I have shown you. So there is definitely some kind of correlation. Now, for the very short term, we are pretty much overextended and more than 30% up from the 200 EMA on the 4-hour chart. So I think it's not unlikely that we will see some kind of small pullback, especially because Render has not seen a big pullback, while most of the other coins had a pullback already. For Render token, it's been up only. That would mean if price goes back to the 0.618, we would then meet the EMA, but we definitely don't have to go this low, especially if we have a catalyst that pumps all of the altcoins while Bitcoin is staying in a tight range. In this scenario, we could, for example, go to the 382 and then find a local bottom here and pump from there onwards. So until further notice, dips are for buying. The 382 would also be below the 200 EMA on the 1-hour chart, which, as you can see, is holding up for this whole recent rally. Meaning if we don't see a quick reversal here, it could take a while to bounce, and in turn increases the likelihood for price going lower. So for example, to the 0.5 and 0.618, which then acts as a strong buy zone, as I have shown you. This is also the EMA 200 on the 4-hour chart. A very important thing for the very long term is on the weekly chart, you can see we are just approaching all-time highs. And normally when all-time highs are broken, price rallies pretty hard. Now, if we pull up the Fibonacci tool, we should look long-term for the 1.618, and this would be from this very moment a 8.7x. And if price gets that small pullback in the short term, we would look at around a 10x, which I already mentioned before. So here we're talking about the really reasonable price targets. Of course, if the AI narrative is picking up even more steam, we could look at higher prices. But let me show you the Ethereum chart in comparison. Here, if we look at the last cycle and use the Fibonacci tool as well, you can see that we nearly touched the 1.618 here. And compared to Render, we were here at this point, so just at all-time highs, and we broke them rapidly, which from that point gave us a 4x, a little bit more. And technical analysis wise, this would be pretty much comparable as from the exact all-time high and just below the 1.618. If we perfectly compare it to Ethereum, this would be then a 6x. So once again, not the most crazy multiples, but I would say one of the safest bets for a 10x. as I said earlier. And in the case of a black swan event, we never know. Price could go lower here, and price would go as low as maybe here, for example. This will be one of the projects I'm buying for sure, because then we will look at around a 20x. So once again, dips are for buying. Smaller ones, bigger ones, doesn't matter. But what do you think? Is my price target not optimistic enough? Are you looking maybe at 100x? Let me know down in the comment section. And also do tell me, is there a project you think is worth reviewing? Maybe another AI project? Please also let me know. Now, if you're into render, then there is a project that you will for sure like as well, and that is Eigenlayer. It also has real world utility. This project is revolutionizing Ethereum, and the coin is not even out yet. So there's a extremely high likelihood of an airdrop. It allows for more money on more money, something I'm explaining in this video here. You should really watch this. And I also explain in my video how you can become eligible for that airdrop. So it's cutting edge technology. It redefines DeFi. It brings a whole new narrative, restaking, but you will see in the video. Make sure to watch it. As always, this was not financial advice. Please always do your own research and due diligence. I hope you gained massive value on this video. Crush the markets. This was Phil Prince for you. Goodbye.